The debate was supposed to be predictable, until one sentence flipped the room upside down. The studio lights blazed like 1,000 suns, casting a white-hot glow on polished desks and pressed suits. Cameras rolled in every corner, catching angles that would later be replayed millions of times online. The live broadcast ticker counted down on screens in the control booth, producers whispering into headsets, reminding anchors to keep the energy high. Tonight wasn't just another political debate. It was the debate. The one networks had hyped for weeks, the one that promised fireworks. The senator, a seasoned figure with decades in the game, walked in confident. He had been through this ritual countless times before. With a smile practiced in mirrors and speeches polished in back rooms, he sat down ready to deliver. His staff had told him, "Stay calm, stay strong, stick to the talking points. You've got this." And he believed it. Across from him sat his opponent, younger, less experienced, but with a reputation for being sharp, relentless, and unafraid of confrontation. To the senator, this was supposed to be a showcase. A chance to prove that age and experience still trumped fresh energy. The moderator cleared his throat, gave a warm smile to the cameras, and said, "Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Tonight we bring you a debate that could shape the political landscape for months to come." The audience in the studio clapped politely, some leaning forward in their seats, others ready with phones in hand to capture their own angles for social media. The energy in the room buzzed like electricity. The first question landed soft. The moderator asked about national policy, about long-term vision. The senator leaned forward, clasped his hands, and began his answer. His voice was strong, confident, rhythmic, the kind of tone designed not to be questioned. He spoke of stability, tradition, values. His supporters in the room nodded along. But then, a subtle thing happened. As he pushed deeper into his argument, he cited a statistic, one he had repeated often in past interviews. Only this time, his opponent across the desk tilted their head, just slightly, and scribbled something on their notes. It was almost imperceptible, but cameras caught it. Viewers at home noticed. And then came the moderator's first interruption. Calm, neutral, but pointed. "Senator, could you share the source for that statistic?" The senator smiled, ready to brush it off. "It's well documented. You can find it in reports from my committee." But before he could finish, his opponent leaned into the microphone. "With all due respect, Senator, that figure was debunked just last month by your own committee staff. In fact, the report you're referring to came to the opposite conclusion." The crowd gasped. A ripple of murmurs spread through the room. Some leaned back in shock, others whispered into each other's ears. The senator blinked. He wasn't expecting a challenge this early, not like this. He chuckled nervously, adjusted his tie, and replied, "Well, that depends on how you interpret the data." But the damage had already begun. The smirk on his face, so rehearsed, and so confident, was not landing the way he imagined. Cameras zoomed in. Social media started buzzing. Words like "caught" and "fact check" appeared in captions as users clipped the moment and shared it in real time. And here is where the story takes its first turn. Because while most politicians recover from a shaky exchange, what came next showed that the senator was walking into quicksand. His opponent didn't just move on. They pressed harder, calm, steady, with the kind of confidence that comes only when you know the facts are on your side. "You've used that number 3 times this month, Senator. But when the report was released, you declined to acknowledge the correction. Why should voters trust a claim that even your own staff discredits?" The silence in the room was deafening. The senator's supporters in the audience shifted in their seats. Opponents smirked, some quietly clapping under their breath. The moderator glanced from one to the other, sensing that something rare was unfolding. And you could feel it, even through the screen, that the senator's armor had just cracked. Viewers at home were hooked. Twitter timelines lit up with one phrase: "He wasn't ready for that." But here's the thing. This was only the beginning. Because what happened after this first exchange was not just a stumble. It was the slow, painful collapse of an argument that had been carefully built, only to unravel in front of millions. The cameras were rolling. The nation was watching. and the senator each night was about to spiral further than anyone in that room could have predicted. Cliffhanger. Because what came next wasn't just a challenge. It was the sentence that turned a confident senator into a man visibly fighting to hold his ground. The senator adjusted his notes, the cameras catching the subtle tremor in his hands. What was once a polished performance was already slipping, and millions of viewers sensed it. The audience inside the studio leaned forward, almost smelling blood in the water. And then it came. The moment that would be clipped, replayed, dissected, and memed across the internet. The opponent leaned into the microphone again, their tone calm but piercing, the kind of tone that cuts through even the loudest noise. Senator, you've built your entire argument tonight around a number that has already been proven false. If that's the foundation of your case, then the rest crumbles with it. Do you have any evidence that isn't already discredited? Gasps shot through the crowd. One man in the back laughed nervously, while a woman in the front row covered her mouth in disbelief. And then, silence. The senator opened his mouth, closed it again, then gave a tight smile. His eyes darted toward the moderator, as if hoping for rescue, but no lifeline came. This was his moment to answer, and the nation was watching. Well, he stammered, I think the American people know. The opponent interrupted sharply. The American people deserve facts, not recycled talking points. The blow landed. The senator's smirk was gone now, replaced with the stiffness of someone struggling to hold composure. The studio lights seemed hotter, harsher. Even his posture betrayed him. Shoulders shrinking, chin tucking lower. The moderator tried to move to the next topic, but the damage was irreversible, because the clip was already circulating online. Viewers on social media were not waiting for the debate to end. They were posting captions like, "Senator just got destroyed in 10 seconds flat, and this is the moment it all fell apart." The commentary online became part of the event itself, feeding back into the live broadcast as reactions scrolled in real time. Even those who hadn't planned to watch were now rushing to live streams, desperate to see what would happen next. The senator pressed on, trying to regain footing. He launched into a passionate defense about his decades of service, his commitment to stability, his long record of leadership. But every word felt weaker now, undercut by the glaring hole in his credibility. And the opponent wasn't finished. "Senator, you've had 30 years to get it right," they said, their voice cutting through the noise. "But tonight you're proving why so many Americans feel unheard. When you lean on falsehoods instead of facts, you're not leading, you're misleading." That line, that single line, sharp and simple, was the dagger. The audience reacted instantly. Gasps, murmurs, even a few scattered claps despite the moderator's calls for quiet. The senator tried to interject, but his words stumbled over each other. "Now hold on, that's not fair." The opponent didn't budge. They leaned back, calm, letting the senator dig deeper into the hole he had created. This was no longer a debate, it was a dismantling, and the senator was the last to realize it. Commentators in the studio's green room were already whispering to each other, exchanging looks of disbelief. "He's collapsing," one said under their breath. "This is the moment everyone will remember." And it was true, because debates aren't won by long speeches or policy outlines. They're won and lost in moments. A pause too long, a smirk that disappears, a single line that cuts so deep it echoes louder than any applause. The senator's argument wasn't just weakening, it was falling apart, piece by piece in front of millions. And the opponent, steady as ever, waited for the silence to sink in before delivering the final blow of the exchange. "You can shout about values, Senator. You can repeat slogans, but you cannot change the truth. And tonight, the truth has exposed your argument for what it is." Hollow. The studio erupted. The moderator's voice struggled to rise above the cheers, the clapping, the gasps. The control room scrambled, trying to regain order for the broadcast. But it was too late. The viral moment had already been born. The senator, red-faced and visibly shaken, muttered something about respectful dialogue and political theater, but it didn't matter. The audience wasn't listening, neither was the nation. Because in that instant, The story had already left the studio. It was on every timeline, in every group chat, captioned with one phrase over and over again. His argument just collapsed. And yet, this was only the second round. The night still had hours to go, and the senator wasn't done trying to claw back dignity. But as we all know, sometimes the harder you fight, the worse the fall becomes. Cliffhanger. Because the real destruction wasn't in that first collapse. It was in what happened when the senator tried, and failed, to rebuild what was already broken. The senator leaned back in his chair, gripping his pen so tightly that his knuckles whitened. His eyes scanned his notes as though somewhere on the paper, a lifeline was written in bold ink. But no lifeline appeared. The silence that followed his collapse weighed heavier than anything he could say. And yet, he spoke anyway. "Look," he began, his voice wavering with a forced confidence. "I have always fought for the people. My record proves it. I've been in these chambers long before my opponent even considered public service. Experience matters. Dedication matters. And what we cannot afford—" But the words trailed off. It was as though his sentences were falling apart mid-air, collapsing under their own weight. The crowd shifted in their seats, sensing desperation. And then, he made his first fatal mistake of the night. "You see," he said sharply, pointing his finger across the stage. "This opponent of mine represents ideals that are radical, ideas that do not align with America's true values." The smirk had returned, or at least a ghost of it. The senator believed he was striking back, but instead, he had walked into a trap, because the opponent, who had remained calm and poised throughout, was ready. "Senator," they replied steadily, "it is not radical to ask for truth. It is not radical to expect accountability. What's truly radical is expecting the American people to accept lies, while you smile and tell them it is for their own good." The room erupted in murmurs. The moderator raised a hand for quiet, but the momentum was no longer in their control. The energy of the audience had shifted. The senator had attacked, and his opponent had countered with precision, the kind of response that doesn't just defend, but flips the attack back on its origin. The senator pressed forward, ignoring the audience. "I have stood on this stage for decades. I know what the people want. I know what leadership looks like. And leadership doesn't look like Twitter moments and viral one-liners." It was meant as a jab, but it backfired spectacularly. The opponent leaned in, eyes locked, voice steady. "Leadership, Senator, doesn't look like bending the truth until it breaks. Leadership is standing on the side of facts, even when those facts are inconvenient. Leadership is giving people respect, not rehearsed slogans." And there it was again. That pause. That sharp silence where the truth lands heavier than any applause. The senator shifted uncomfortably. His fingers tapped the desk. The pen in his hand clicked open and closed. The studio camera zoomed closer, capturing the beads of sweat glistening under the bright lights. Viewers at home were glued to their screens. Social media lit up with captions like, "He's done. Stick a fork in it." And this is the moment the senator's career died on live television. The moderator tried to redirect, asking about policy specifics, but it only exposed more cracks. "Senator, the question is straightforward. Can you provide evidence for your claims tonight?" The senator hesitated. His lips parted, then closed again. He turned a page of notes, then another, as though stalling for time. "Well," he began slowly, "as I've said before, the facts are clear." The opponent cut in, voice sharp. "Then show them." Gasps echoed across the room. "Show them, Senator. Right now. You say the facts are clear. Show us the source. Show us the data. Show us the evidence that your entire argument rests on." The senator froze. His papers were full of slogans, not proof. Sound bites, not sources. The silence was excruciating. The audience could feel it, the way tension vibrates through the air when a tower is about to topple. And then, in a shaky voice, the senator muttered, "Well, that's not how debates work." The studio erupted into laughter. Not mocking laughter, but the kind that says everything. The kind that tells a story without needing words. He has nothing. It is over. The opponent leaned back, calm, almost sympathetic. That's exactly how debates work, Senator. It's about truth. It's about standing before the American people and defending your claims. Tonight you've shown you cannot. The audience clapped. The moderator struggled to regain control. The senator's cheeks flushed crimson, his eyes narrowing into a glare that tried to project confidence, but instead revealed fury. And yet, he still wasn't done. Listen, he snapped, raising his voice. This isn't about sound bites. This isn't about who can land the cleverest line. This is about the future of America. And America does not need lectures. It needs leadership. It was his loudest line yet, delivered with the force of someone trying to shake off failure. But instead of applause, the line landed in dead air. Because the audience already knew, leadership had been displayed tonight, but not by him. Commentators were already preparing their sound bites for the morning headlines. Senator implodes on live TV. Opponent demands proof. Senator has none. Debate turns into political funeral. And that was the true humiliation. It wasn't just that he had stumbled in the moment. It was that his collapse was being broadcast in real time, framed not as an argument, but as the unraveling of a career. The opponent, sensing the end of this exchange, delivered the coup de grace. You've had your chance to lead, Senator. You've had decades. Tonight you've shown us not only that your argument doesn't hold up, but that you cannot even stand behind it. The American people deserve better. The roar of the audience drowned out everything. Claps, cheers, shouts, the kind of energy that signals a cultural moment. The senator sat still, his face frozen in a mask of rage and disbelief. His hand reached for the glass of water beside him, his fingers trembling. He took a sip, but even that was caught by the cameras. Viewers saw it for what it was, a man drowning under the weight of his own collapse. The moderator called for a break. The cameras cut away, but the story didn't pause. Online, clips of the exchange were already climbing into the millions. Journalists were posting live takes. Memes were being generated in real time. The senator's name was trending with hashtags he could never have imagined. And as the broadcast resumed, everyone knew. The senator's attempt to recover would be less about winning the debate and more about surviving the humiliation. Cliffhanger. But what happened next would prove that survival was impossible. Because when the senator tried to rebuild his broken argument, the collapse only grew louder. The break was meant to save him. At least that was the hope of his team backstage. Advisors rushed to the senator during those few minutes, whispering strategies, handing him fresh notes, reminding him of rehearsed talking points. But nothing could change what millions had just witnessed. A collapse in real time is not something you can patch with a slogan. When the cameras came back, the senator's smile looked tighter, almost forced. He adjusted his tie, leaned forward, and tried to project control. "Ladies and gentlemen," he began, "let us not get lost in theatrics tonight. The people at home deserve more than a spectacle. They deserve serious debate about serious issues." It was a clever line, at least it was meant to be. But the problem was obvious. He had turned the night into a spectacle, and the audience knew it. The smirk, the arrogance, the collapse when asked for evidence. All of it lived fresh in their minds. The opponent, calm and unshaken, leaned forward slightly. "Serious issues, Senator?" "Exactly. And when asked for evidence, you offered none. That is not theatrics. That is accountability." The words cut like glass. The audience reacted instantly with a low hum of approval. Some clapped softly, while others whispered. The studio, once neutral, had shifted sides completely. The senator tried again. He launched into a long, winding monologue, full of passion, but empty of clarity. His sentences bled into one another, full of "I believe, we must," and "let us." But nowhere was there substance. It was painful to watch. Commentators at home typed furiously, "He's drowning." This is political history unfolding in real time. The senator is filibustering his own career, and then came the moment no one expected. The moderator, who had been struggling to keep order all night, interrupted gently but firmly. "Senator, I must stop you there. You still have not answered the original question. Can you provide evidence?" The senator blinked. His lips trembled for a second, Well, the evidence is vast. It exists. It's in the reports. People know. It was the same trick he had used for years. Vague assurances, never specifics. But tonight, the audience wasn't buying it. The opponent seized the moment. Senator, it's simple. You've had decades of experience, and yet tonight, when asked a straightforward question, you cannot produce a single fact to defend yourself. That is why your argument is falling apart. The crowd erupted again. Gasps, applause, even a few laughs. The senator's face turned crimson. For a moment, silence hung in the studio. Not the silence of anticipation, but the silence of realization. Everyone knew the senator's armor had shattered. And then came the opponent's final blow, one sentence that would become the headline, the viral clip, the moment etched into political memory. Senator, America deserves truth, and tonight you've shown you cannot deliver it. It was devastating in its simplicity. The senator sat back, defeated. He fiddled with his pen again, his hands trembling slightly. He tried to interject, but the words wouldn't come. The camera zoomed closer, capturing every flicker of emotion. The rage, the embarrassment, the fear. Social media exploded. Hashtags trended instantly. Jean Senator falls apart. Jamais show. The facts. Truth wins. Clips spread like wildfire, each replay showing the same arc. Smirk, stumble, silence, collapse. By the time the debate ended, the outcome wasn't about who won. It was about who had survived, and the senator had not. As the credits rolled, pundits filled the airwaves with their takes. This was not just a bad night, one said. This was the kind of collapse that ends careers. Another added, the opponent didn't just defeat him, they exposed him. And viewers felt it too. At home, families sat around their televisions, nodding. They knew they had seen more than a debate. They had seen a reckoning. The commentary continued, but the emotional truth was simple. Arrogance had crumbled before accountability. The opponent, walking off stage, didn't gloat. They didn't smirk. They simply carried themselves with dignity, aware that the night had proven something larger than politics. And that is the lesson of this story. For years, the senator had relied on bluster, on confidence, on the illusion of control. But in the end, control means nothing without truth. And truth, though quiet, always finds its way to the surface. That is why the collapse mattered. Not because of one debate, one argument, or one viral clip, but because it reminded the nation of something timeless. The powerful can posture, they can shout, they can bluff. But eventually, the truth wins. So the question is left for you, the viewer. What kind of leadership do you want to see? The kind that hides behind slogans, or the kind that stands firm on facts even when those facts are inconvenient? The senator gave us his answer tonight, by failing to answer at all. The story will replay for weeks, the clip will trend for months, but the impact will last for years. Because in that studio, on that night, dignity outshone arrogance. And as millions watched, one truth echoed louder than the applause, louder than the collapse, louder than the senator's silence. America will always remember who stood for facts and who fell apart when asked to prove them. So if you believe in truth over bluster, if you believe in dignity over arrogance, then do not let this story end here. Share it. Talk about it. Carry it forward. Because tonight was not just about a senator's argument falling apart. It was about the American people rising up, to say that truth still matters. And that is a story worth telling again and again.